Thanks for staying up later. From Los Angeles, David Kelley is with us. 4 of the 5 years that he was associated with L.A. Law as the head writer for the whole stretch, part of the time as the executive producer, the show won the Emmy for Best Dramatic Series. Now this past year, first time out of the box with Picket Fences, Best Dramatic Series, plus Best Actress for Kathy Baker, Best Actor for Tom Skerritt. What a night.
It was a night, a sweep. Never got that on L.A. Law, the big 3. So this was definitely the sweetest of them all.
Picket Fences.
Obviously, your audience is going to find you and hook into it with Picket Fences like they did with L.A. Law. But I would imagine that some people, maybe just flipping by and sampling, do honestly get confused with L.A. Law to some extent, and certainly with Picket Fences. Am I watching a drama here? Wait a minute. Like the opening episode this year, the mayor just shoots somebody, but in the very next scene, there's kind of a comical exchange between a potential eyewitness who's like a confused little old man and Tom Skerritt's sheriff. Am I watching a comedy here? Am I watching a drama?
Well, if we do it right, the comedy and, like life, comedy and tragedy are never mutually exclusive.
Where were you? Standing about 50 yards away. I was poised in eyewitness position. That's what I am, an eyewitness.
I see.
Can you get me on Action News?
We know you suffer from Alzheimer's.
This isn't my Alzheimer's. I saw it. It was vicious. Details at 11.
You can keep it real, you can get away with it. Hopefully the scenes that even though we're portraying comedy, will not belie the severity of the subject matter and undercut your dramatic tension. If that's happening, then you have a problem. If it's not, if it's still moving the plot, you can laugh, but you're not compromising the plot, then you get away with it.
Almost all of your scripts, Picket Fences or L.A. Law, seems to me you like to introduce a topic that has a lot of gray areas and try and show both sides of it. Yeah. And the person advocating the other side is never just some straw man.
Right.
You know, I mean, if an issue is worth debating, you've got people of equal appeal and equal intelligence taking either side, and then the audience can just draw whatever conclusions they want.
Right. The best stories are the ones that really offer good questions, not good answers. And if there's an issue or a topic that's really one-sided, it doesn't make for great dramatic conflict. And it's also less interesting if your audience is ahead of you and they've already got their opinion. The best feedback, the most rewarding feedback we get is when we hear people say that they changed their mind in the middle of the show and then changed it back again in the 3rd act, and in the 4th act were totally confused and didn't know which way to go. It's those cases that are strong on both sides that are the most interesting.
What was the reaction like to the L.A. Law episode for which you won a writing Emmy, where the firm defended, and Jimmy Smits argued the case, defended the doctor who didn't want to perform surgery on a guy who was in the very last stages of dying of AIDS?
The AIDS. The reaction was uniformly positive for that one. That, for as controversial an issue as that was, I don't think we got any flack. I'd like to think it was because the people felt it was responsibly done. The issue was a man was hauled into the emergency room. He had AIDS, and the doctor on call said, "I'm not sticking my hands in his stomach. I mean, I have a wife, I have a family, I want to live." He has a right to a doctor, but I have a right as a doctor too. I'm not putting my hands in his belly. And he died and was sued. It was a real controversial, provocative episode, and at first you're sort of offended by how dare they. This is an emergency room, they're a doctor, and they're in the business of saving lives. Then you look at him as a human being who has kids who expect him to be around for a long time. He has a responsibility to his family as well.
Dr. Diane, when this patient went into shock, you knew that if you didn't operate right away, he was going to die.
Yes. And every single day I'm haunted by the memory of watching him die. I stood there and watched it. But I also knew, given his weakened immune system, that there was a chance that he wouldn't survive the procedure. And when I considered that, along with the fact that it's a bloody operation and that I would be risking my own life as well, I made my decision. Now, am I conflicted about this? Absolutely. Was I wrong? I don't think so.
We had another case on LA Law where a woman had cancer and she was going to die, and she was in her 3rd trimester, and if she died before a baby was delivered, then the baby would also die with the woman. And Jill Eikenberry's character, Ann Kelsey, went into court to force her to have a cesarean to save the baby, the argument being that one life is lost, why not mitigate this and prevent 2 lives from being lost? And it seemed to make sense. But boy, oh boy, did that generate a avalanche of protest. How could this character, Ann Kelsey, a champion of women's rights, march into court and argue that this woman shouldn't be vested with control over her own body? It shocked their sensibilities with respect to this character, Ann Kelsey. There haven't been too many like that, but your audience, in LA Law it was particularly so. We haven't quite got there with Picket Fences yet, but in LA Law, your viewers knew those characters. Mm-hmm. They belonged to the viewers. We used to get letters when Rosalind Shays, which was a character that came in and undermined the firm and was not an altogether pleasant personality for the characters to deal with.
And eventually went down the elevator shaft.
Yeah, she did. That was unfortunate.
Rosalind, I'm sorry I can't marry you.
This isn't about that.
This is about that. For the past week, I've been getting nothing but resentment. You know that's true.
I don't resent you, Leland. If anything, maybe I resent myself.
For staying with a man who doesn't love you.
I really don't want to talk about it.
Rosalind! Oh my God!
But before she went down the shaft, she became senior partner in the firm. We would get letters from people watching the show. I will not show up for work on Thursday nights at 10 o'clock if she is in charge. I'm not coming to the firm. As if that was their home. That's the place they worked on Thursdays at 10 o'clock, and they weren't going to do it if Rosalind was in charge. They were going to quit.
Now, what do you do with letters like that? Turn them over to audience services or some sort of special psychiatric bureau?
Those are, believe me, I used to laugh at those letters on LA Law. Now I wish for them. I want that kind of investment on Picket Fences. We should be so lucky that people will call up and say, I'm not coming to Rome, Wisconsin if that person is the mayor, or that kind of investment. Don't take it for granted. It's tough to get that. So at the time you kind of snicker at it, and now I kind of miss it.
15 years ago, you didn't have the slightest inkling that you'd have a career in television.
None.
Thought you'd be a lawyer?
I'd be a lawyer.
Did you ever practice, or you were just in law school?
Yeah, no, I practiced for 3 years, but I had absolutely no ambitions of living on the West Coast or functioning as a writer. It's something that was not even seemingly offered.
How did it start?
It actually started through, I used to write in college as a hobby. I liked writing sketches for theater and plays, but just as something that was fun. And while I was practicing law, I came up with an idea about a young lawyer. I know when I was a first-year litigator in a prestigious Boston firm, you were well schooled in which hoops to jump through and to, which deference to pay to which judge, and you sat there and you sort of bit your lip and you said all the right things and did all the right things, and there was something very constraining about it. And it gave me the idea of what if a first-year litigator decided he was going to be the John McEnroe of in the courtroom and just said what he did and resorted to whatever antics he wanted to resort to. And this character then gave rise to a story which I wrote while I was practicing law. And the story ended up getting bought, the screenplay ended up getting bought by a person who I was connected to through hockey. And he had come out here to start a production
Just for those
company.
who don't know, your dad was a hockey coach, Boston University and the New England Whalers of the old WHA, and you played college hockey at Princeton, and you were pretty good.
Well, I had my moments if my defense partner was behind me. But Howard Baldwin was my father's employer with the Whalers. He now owns the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he was the man who was forming a production company. He read my script. We had known each other through hockey, through the Whalers, and optioned it, sold it to De Laurentiis. It was about a young lawyer. And at the same time that was going into production, Fox Studios was starting the show called LA Law, and they were looking for lawyer/writers. And out I came in 1986 and stayed.
What percentage of lawyers, in your experience, are capable of delivering a summation that would stand up on television, that would have any of the dramatic elements of the summations that you see in a movie or a TV show?
There are quite a few who are capable, who have the sense of drama and who have the performing art to do it. They can't do it the way we do it on LA Law, because most closing arguments take place after 3-4 weeks of trials, where you've got to remind the jury what the facts are. In LA Law, you just told them the facts and your act before the act breaks, so they know the facts, and now you can stand up and go pure argument, pure persuasion for that minute and a half. But we hear from judges all the time who instruct their attorneys to watch LA Law, saying an effective closing doesn't have to be 25 minutes. You see the way those guys get up there and do it in 90 seconds? It can be done. Do it. Because after 2 minutes, the jury's looking out the window anyway. So watch them do what they do. We got that a lot.
When you watch court TV, do you find yourself saying, hey, you got the facts right, but come on, off to drama school for a while.
Speed it up.
You know, turn left, look over here, make some eye contact. How about some gestures?
All the time. I remember my first case as a lawyer. I practiced for 2 days in the mirror. I mean, I had every dramatic, it was involving a kid who stole a car. And I had every dramatic pause down. I had a part in the middle of the argument. I was going to pretend to get lost and flustered, so I would come off that much more genuine. We put all the facts in. It was a one-day trial. I get up, I button my coat, I step up, and the judge says, hold just a second, defense counsel. Mr. Prosecutor, do you have any more evidence? And he said, no, Your Honor, I don't. He says, not guilty. My client is jumping up and down. I'm there. And the judge saw it on my face. He said, counsel, if you want to come back in chambers and give me your closing, I'll listen to it, but let's not waste the rest of this court's time.
Were you ever held in contempt?
No, I was never held in contempt. I did almost get into a fight in a courtroom once when I asked the judge to sanction the opposing counsel to 3 more years of law school. And he turned and yelled at me. He says, I don't need you to embarrass me in front of my peers. And I said, you certainly don't. And then he took a step toward me, and the judge, who privately wanted to kill this guy, said, counsel, why don't you take it out in the hall? But there was no referee to step in between us out in the hall, so of course we both went different directions.
You mentioned the script you were working on, movie script, and then you wind up going off to LA Law. After you're at LA Law, this movie gets made, right?
Yes, it did.
With Judd Nelson playing this John McEnroe type marauding attorney.
Yes.
I can see by the look on your face, this isn't the proudest moment of your life.
No, it didn't come out exactly the way I intended. But that's the movie business. One thing I like about television, it is a writer's medium. The writer hires the director. The writer is in control of the final product.
And we're back with David Kelley. You go back a long way with Stephen Bochco, LA Law and other stuff. What's your take on NYPD Blue?
I love it. I really think it's a great show. Coincidentally, I think that the thing that I like the least is the sex. Because I find that the sex sometimes stops the action. And I don't think that the show needs it. I think the show is strong enough to sustain without it. The language doesn't bother me. The only time I'm affected by the language is sometimes a word will remind me that ground is being broken, and again, that breaks the wall down. I'd rather just stay with the story and go with the story and live and breathe with the characters.
Do I sense a mild criticism, though, in that you think there's some posturing?
Well,
posturing going on in that, hey, we're outrageous, we're pushing the envelope, this is something new?
I think Stephen is a very, very smart man. He put on the Civil Wars was a quality show. They told their stories well. The production was excellent. Everything was work. I think Stephen was a little baffled why that didn't catch on. And I think he was convinced after that show that in order for a show to break out now, you have to be outrageous. You have to put a handle on it that causes you to be distinguished, to separate you from the pack. And he's certainly done that. And Wildman's helped him by jumping up and saying...
Donald Wildman, who's the self-appointed watchdog for TV.
When he gets up and says, don't watch, boycott it, boycott it, boycott it, he's just bringing attention to it.
How much of the general criticism of television do you think is valid? That it doesn't reflect, in total, there's something going on here that doesn't reflect what the American people believe, how they want their children's lives to be influenced. That there's some legitimate area of concern, not for wackos, but for all of us.
I think some of it's valid. I mean, I'm not a big fan of television. I think that most of the stuff that is on there is lousy. And I don't think many shows really accurately reflect the values or tastes of the American public. But I don't think the American public wants today to tune in and see their values and tastes reflected. There's a junk food mentality that people bring to the television these days. And it's just like when we go to a fast food restaurant and eat the greasy fries and the bad hamburger. It's not that we're sitting and we're deeming this particular kind of food to be gourmet. It's what we want at the moment. And people are watching this stuff, and as long as they watch it, the networks will put it on. You know, in the Emmys, Barbara Walters marched out front and center and lectured the American public, saying, you're the consumer, you can do better. If the material isn't up to your standards, turn it off. And she marched off. Her very next episode on 2020, the lead piece, the centerpiece, involved the woman who severed her husband's penis and ran around and threw it out the car. There's a hypocrisy in television. We will put it on if you will watch. There is a shocking lack of integrity. And some of it comes from sour grapes, because 2020 and Barbara Walters and her penis-severing episodes kills picket fences. And I sit there going, you know, maybe I should do an episode about someone chasing Barbara Walters and getting ratings, but I won't do it. I sit here saying, you know, I've got sort of a field of dreams naivete. If you build it, people will come. But they don't. There's a very tabloid-esque phenomenon going on in television, and it's working.
You know, in fairness, though, to 2020, there are tabloid aspects to it, just like there are to all news magazines. But there's also some pretty worthwhile stuff. 2020 is pretty much top of the line.
60 Minutes and 2020 are probably, and Primetime are the three best. But that makes it more horrifying that one of your top dogs is resorting to anatomy severing for ratings, and it happens.
I read a quote of yours where you said that when you started out, your ambition was to be able to do an American Express commercial, one of those.
Yes.
Do you know me?
Right.
And then people would all know your work, but they wouldn't know your face or even necessarily know your name. But here you are, sitting here. You're at the Emmy Awards. You know?
Well, at the Emmy Awards, I have to go. I've never done these shows before, and I usually go away. I think what's happening here at an unconscious level is I'm looking at you, and I'm seeing the sports announcer, and you're really talking to me about how I backed up Bill Buckner and fielded that ground ball and got it to Stanley and ended the game.
Do you still think about the ball going through Bill Buckner's legs?
Every day. I killed Bill Buckner in L.A. Law. The next episode that came out, the defendant was named Bill Buckner, and he was sentenced to death. And I apologized to Bill Buckner because I know he's suffered a lot of hardship, and it was a game, and let's forget it. But for those of us who are Red Sox fans, it's still very, very tough.
And the pitch by Stanley, and a ground ball, trickling. It is a fair ball. Gets by Buckner, rounding third night. The Mets will win the ball game. The Mets win. They win. Unbelievable. The Red Sox in stunned disbelief.
It ended my cousin's wedding. My cousin's reception was going on. Everyone had Sonys. This was in Boston.
Saturday night it was.
Saturday night.
Game 6,
The
86
band
World
hadn't
Series.
come on for its second set yet. The game ended. Car doors were slamming. Everybody left. My cousin was and her groom were standing there in an empty room. What happened? Even the band didn't want to play anymore, except the drummer. He wanted to bang on things.
I don't know how many people have told me this story, that they were watching the game, people all around New England, or Red Sox fans displaced, watching the game. It gets to be the bottom of the 10th inning. The Red Sox lead by 2, and they go into the bedroom and wake up their little children who were too young to stay up that late. Kids 6, 7 years old, and they want them to come sit on their lap, and they say, I want you to see this because you'll remember it someday. And they're thinking of their father or their grandmother who literally can't remember the last time the Red Sox won in 1918, who suffered through all the near misses, and they want this generation to be there. And while this child sat on their lap, I mean, I've personally had dozens of people tell me this, the whole thing slipped away.
Well, the same thing happened at this wedding I was at. My uncle said, no televisions, no Sonys, I don't want to see them. I don't want my daughter's wedding upstaged by a World Series baseball game. That all changed by the 9th or 10th inning. They were rolling in the big televisions. The whole wedding reception was transfixed on the game.
But think of how great that reception would have been had they won.
It would still be going.
Well, kids, time's up. Friday nights on CBS, David Kelley's award-winning, Emmy award-winning Picket Fences. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
See you later.